Okay. Oh, that nice calm sound of nothing. That's perfect. every single one I start this with a like anticipation that it's going to be loud screeching and noise problems. I need to manifest better in terms of like smooth. It's going to be fine. It's going to be really nice. Anyway,
It is. We made it.
oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, Grace, welcome to Another Door podcast.
So pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were just chatting before we went live about it's sort of, is it serendipity? Is it kind of like when things come together? But yeah, I saw your book on Graham Alcott's Instagram, thought, ooh, curious. Then I saw you were on the Happy Startups, and then Carlos sent me a message about your book and what the work you do, and I was like, ooh, okay. And then I think you sent me a message, and I was like, right, okay, this is gonna happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the same for me. I kind of like heard your name mentioned on various podcasts. It might have been Graham's first, and then I was speaking to Carla Miller, and then she mentioned you as well. I was like, right, okay, yeah, we need to talk.
We're united in struggle. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I've got your book here, which is amazing. Look, I've got all my little tags and post-it notes and notes all the way
Love
through
it.
it. So I can't wait to talk to you about it. But before we do, perhaps just give us a little introduction.
Yeah, so who am I? So I am Grace Marshall. I'm officially, my job title is Productivity Ninja. So I'm part of Graham Alcott's team at Think Productive, where we basically go into different organizations and help people think about the way they work and help them find ways of working with less stress, less overwhelm, and more what I like to call playful, productive momentum. So it's like really practical stuff, like how do I deal with like the deluge of emails and meetings and all the stuff I'm juggling in work and in life. And then as well as that, I do my own coaching. So I run my own coaching business and I write books. So this book, Struggle, is my third book.
I saw, yeah. And the other thing is you do speaking and things like that. Yeah, I've been watching a few of your bits on YouTube. Incredible, all incredible stuff. And it's quite funny, this kind of book. I want to talk to you a bit more about the book specifically around the title, because I think struggle at the moment is an interesting word. Like, have we had a struggle? Have we had an enlightenment? What have we had? But struggle kind of comes to mind first, but you've kind of changed it. You've reframed it. And the lovely thing about this book, it felt really gentle. It felt really calm. Whereas the word struggle isn't that for people. So I'm really intrigued as to where you got your idea from for the whole thing at the beginning.
Yeah, so the idea actually came about in 2018, and it was through a kind of culmination of different things that I noticed. So, like everyday struggles. So people saying to me, "Oh, Grace, I feel like I'm struggling," and often in productivity terms, you almost see I'm struggling as like the opposite of being productive.
Yeah.
But then the more that I delve into it, sometimes I was like, "This isn't a productivity problem." And actually, sometimes it's not even a problem. It's like you're struggling because you're doing something new, or you're pushing boundaries and you're pushing into new territory. Or like the last year, we've been in the cliche, well, now it's a cliche term, unprecedented times, right? So there's something about recognizing struggle as a normal part of the journey. And in doing so, what we do is we stop beating ourselves up about it. And we start actually facing it and going, okay, so like who do I need to be to tackle this? Because what I notice is we tend to there's like a certain shame around struggle. And so a lot of people kind of hide that they're struggling. In fact, somebody I spoke to the other day who a mutual friend had like sent them my book. They were like, I didn't pick it up for ages because I was like, does she think I'm struggling? So there's a certain, I don't know, taboo to struggle that we seem to have that I think makes it harder, because rather than just going, oh, something's gone wrong, we start thinking maybe something's wrong with me. And that kind of affects our confidence, affects how we show up. And also sometimes it activates a fight or flight instinct. So we basically, just like what I noticed, like how we show up to struggle can change how we experience it and what we make it to mean. And then that actually changes what we do next.
Wow, I love that. And that's really interesting, because when I saw the first time I saw the book, I thought, really interesting, because I'm a wordy person and I get probably too involved in words. And I
Me
thought,
too.
Yes, exactly. I thought, interesting, calling a book Struggle, will that put people up? Because it's almost like you say, people want the problem solved. And obviously you've got the surprising truth and beauty of life's shittier moments, which is the subtitle, which actually is, perfect. But I thought, interesting word, struggle. So I exactly get what you mean around people feel like it's something you got to fight with and wrestle with. Yeah. And you're constantly having to get rid of it and constantly trying to, if you're feeling like you're having a struggle, that's a bad thing. So that totally drove me in. Like the first kind of part of your book was, as I say, I felt calm rather than like, oh my God, is this going to be like, is it going to be a struggle? Is it going to be a struggle to read? No.
Exactly.
Very calming. So brilliant that you said that, because that's what struck me. I was like, oh yeah, that's the struggle. So where did you start when you started to pull together? Because the thing again that struck me was I was kind of taken on a journey. So as I was reading through the book, it almost followed like a pattern. You were almost mirroring where I was at in my thoughts, which, love that. But where did you get your inspiration? Where did you get your input for the content?
So I actually started out from like lots of little things kind of, and I had a real job of pulling it together. In fact, if you talk to my editor, like the word structure was the thing that we were all struggling with. Like, how does this whole thing fit together? But like, right at the beginning, I think the first bits I wrote were, there was just the idea about productivity. Productivity is just about getting things done efficiently as fast as possible. Then actually, when we're struggling, we're going to feel like we're not being productive. So there was that kind of framing. But also there's the piece about we can do hard things. Yeah. About like my kids and how I feel as a parent of wanting to fix things, but actually what they need is to know that struggle is normal. And if I dive in and fix things too quickly, I'm telling them that there's something wrong with them. That they can't do it straight away. So there was that piece. And then there was, the guy who gets all the complaints. Yes. So the Waterloo Station story.
Yeah. That's one of my, that's got one of the Post-it notes.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a whole combination of things that we notice at work, things we notice in parenting, things we notice in life. And that's how it started. And then I started pulling together more just thoughts and ideas. It was really just an idea that refused to leave me alone. So I started writing them in just like really short vignettes and then going, well, how does this relate to that? And like you said, I didn't want to write a book on struggle that was a struggle to read. So I didn't want it to be a heavy tome. I wanted it to be really sort of snackable, the sort of thing that you could have with a cup of tea. And so this kind of style ended up emerging. I think I was slightly inspired by Stephen Pressfield, because he tends to write like that, doesn't he? It's like one page, leads to the next, leads to the next. So I was kind of inspired by him and Rebecca Solnit as well, who kind of writes sort of essay styles on a theme. But then also just bringing in all the different bits that I've learned from other people and other authors, and then the stories that come up in my life and in the people around me. Yeah. So it's kind of it was a bit of a smorgasbord of just bringing things together. It's very different. I think my last two books, I had a table of contents and I had a chapter structure and I knew what I was going to do. This one was like, I've no idea. So I had to kind of write it guts first. Yeah. And then like go, right, okay, now we need to pull a skeleton together and sew it together and see how it comes together.
I actually love the fact that it was a struggle at first to write the book about struggle. Brilliant. Yeah. It had to be.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
It couldn't be all organised. That would defeat the whole point. So I want to quote, I'm going to get my first little bit that I really loved. So quote in here, there is magic in the mess. There is beauty in the chaos. Struggle is the birthplace of creativity. Absolutely love that. It made me laugh because I thought, oh my God, every time I feel myself like having, a dip in energy, or the business isn't doing well, or I need to rethink something, I dive into creativity like a crazy person. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that. The magic is in the mess, the beauty in the chaos. Struggle is the birthplace of creativity. I love it.
Yeah. I think there's something about our brains like routine and familiar. Like, as much as we like change and exciting and new things, there's a part of our brain that likes to stick with what it knows. And combined with how we feel about sort of being professional and being competent and confident, we usually like to stick to our strengths and stick to the familiar path. And so sometimes it doesn't, like, we might have new ideas, we might go, oh yeah, I'd like to do that, but it's almost not until that kind of conventional route is shut that we're then kind of forced to go to the unconventional. We're forced to go to the periphery. So sometimes when things are too neat and tidy, it's like the status quo is too strong. So it's not until things are a mess that you then go, okay, right, the status quo is truly broken. And we found that in the pandemic, so many people went, fine, I can experiment with new ways of working now because like the status quo is well and truly broken. So it gives us like a permission to play, to experiment, to get creative, because it's already a mess. So it's almost like, there's a saying, isn't there? You can't spoil an ugly baby. I don't know where that comes from. No idea where that comes from, but it just, gives you that sense of when things are a mess. Yes, it can feel chaotic, can feel out of control, and it can feel scary, but there's also a certain freedom in that to get creative, to explore, to experiment. And so there's a certain magic in that.
Yeah. That, and obviously that is job loss. It obviously is what I wrote about, and that is exactly it. And people ask me, well, how can you say that it's going to be a good thing when you lose your job? But it's breaking the sort of autopilot.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that I didn't realize how much autopilot I was on in corporate or in my 9 to 5. Like, get up, go do the commute, get to work. It was all autopilot. I wasn't thinking about anything apart from the presentation that needed to be done, or so-and-so not liking this, and so-and-so not the email that came in from blah blah. That was it. And it had to be broken, as you say, cause a bit of a mess. So can people cause their own mess?
Yeah.
That's my curiosity around that. Do you have to wait for a mess to come along, like what you said, like, or can you cause your own mess?
I think you can. I think, and I think some people are more inclined towards it than others, but I think it's something that you can engineer with a little bit of intention. So Graham, who we both know, he sometimes does this thing at Think Productive in meetings where he calls it smash shit up. I think it comes from, it might be from Brewdog or something like that, but basically it's like, what are our sacred cows? What are the things that we've just kind of come to accept as like, this is how we do things around here, and we actually don't know why we want to why we still do that. So I think you can sometimes create that environment for like, if you were to, and I think someone else talked about killing the company. Like, if we were to kill the company, what would we do? So sometimes those kind of like thought experiments can be a useful way of creating some mess. I think we can also, so I was talking to someone the other day who actually said, I've been trying to get myself made redundant. Like, I actually want to join the club and I want to be made redundant because there's all these other things that I want to explore. But I want, like he was saying, I want the security of being made redundant. So I've got a bit of money behind me because it feels like a reckless thing to just leave the job. And we were chatting and just exploring, like, and one of the things I said to him was like, if this, because I think he actually enjoys his job, but he also wants to like do other stuff. So I said, if this job was a client, so if you already had that lifestyle that you're talking about, and this job was just one of your clients, what would you do differently? And it was really interesting to me. Like, one of my thoughts was like, is he going to say I'm going to fire my client? But he didn't. Like, what he would want to change would be more like, oh, actually, I want to have like these opportunities here and I want to do this differently. And so then it's like, oh, maybe I can do that without leaving the job. Or maybe like I can start doing that and that will create a bridge to then enable me to leave, because I'm not just jumping into the ether. I'm like kind of leaving with some some like bricks already built, like in terms of the new life or whatever that career is going to be. Yeah. So yeah.
That's great. I love that example. Lots of people say that to me as well. They send me messages saying, I've bought your book, but I haven't lost my job. I just would like to lose my job.
Yeah.
And it's also the decision bit as well as the money. Not everybody obviously gets money, but it's the decision bit that I find interesting. People don't want to make the decision.
Yeah.
They say, well, if I lost my job, it wasn't
I'm forced. Yeah, that's it.
I didn't take the decision to make the mess of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But it's interesting about, we still want to bring in sort of safety into the mess. Like that example there is classic, isn't it? Well, I need the money, so I'm safe. But yet struggle, sometimes you need the struggle. You need to be at the bottom to fight harder to get momentum. I meet a lot of people who've had payouts. Obviously, sometimes they come and work with us in another door. And they're like, oh, I've done nothing for 3 months. I don't know. Like, they've just lost momentum.
That's it. And it's only when the money runs out that they suddenly go, right.
Exactly. The clock ticks and they're like, oh my God, well, I've got to do something. And then suddenly it all goes. So I think the concept of struggle, and you mention it in here, and a bit about crisis and, you know, that like what it is to somebody is really interesting. Do we always have to be in a state of, alert, in that crisis state to perform in struggle?
It's an interesting one, that kind of crisis response. So our instant response to struggle tends to be one of fight or flight. So it's like a stress response. And there are certain elements of that that's really useful. So things like you get the adrenaline, you get the energy because it's preparing your body to fight or to run away. You get a certain focus, and it's almost like tunnel vision. You get narrow focus because if you imagine that you're out in the wild and a bear is running at you, like at that point in time, you don't want to notice how beautiful the trees are. You just want to notice like, what's the weak point in this opponent, or what's my escape route? So you kind of home in, and there's a certain focus and energy to that. But the problem with that is when, so psychologists talk about like when we go to from acute stress to chronic stress, it's like when we're in that moment too long, if we're in that fight and flight state too long, we actually lose all our focus. And also when we're in fight and flight, certain parts of our system get shut down. So like the digestive system, the immune system, but also certain parts of our brain, like the more creative thinking, where we want to kind of look on a wider perspective. We don't do that when we're in fight and flight. So I think it's a really interesting tension between having enough pressure to like go, I need to do something, but then like almost managing yourself so that you go, okay, like this is something where I need to do something, but it's not a bear running at me. So like the most useful part of my brain I can activate are the ones that require certain, like that almost like I need to sort of let the fight and flight subside. I need to get the slower part of my brain engaged. I need to get the more creative part of my brain engaged. Otherwise, I'm just going to be treating this like a battle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we do see that when you lose your job, you just go straight into that tunnel vision of pressing the apply button for anything and everything. And then you just get lost in that kind of moment of, if I haven't applied for 10 jobs today, then I'm not working hard enough. And yet, as you just said, sometimes you need to stop and refocus and go, I don't want these 10 jobs.
Yes.
I just want one amazing job. 'Cause that's all you need. You don't need 10. You need one amazing job. And that whole kind of rethinking of that.
Yeah. And do you find as well that like, especially if there's a bit of sort of trauma associated with the redundancy, that people are kind of almost want to just like box up that whole thing and go, I never want to do anything like that again?
Interesting. No, okay. Probably later on. That's really interesting. I mean, obviously I haven't actually researched every single person who's ever lost their job, but the pattern is more that because you're still in your sort of panic zone, you're more likely just to get a job that's exactly the same.
Gotcha.
And almost identical in every way, like commute and everything, because that's your comfort zone. It's what you know. And so We see that more, but obviously another door's trying to break that. It's trying to break it, and like what you described, it's trying to say you can upgrade this situation. You don't have to just jump into the next thing. And I call it a rebound job, when you kind of sit there a year later and you're like, oh, how did I get here?
Yeah, I'm here again.
I'm here again. What happened? It's a rebound, which is fine. But yeah, I think your description is really classic, I think, in terms of that. The people that have got time, or they've got the motivation just to disrupt their thinking a little bit and allow themselves to think this could be an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that came out from the book around struggle. If people are struggling, it's very hard to see opportunity because you're on a spiral of this chatter that comes inside. And you talk, you've got loads of really lovely examples about it. What would you say to someone who's listening, who's in that kind of chatter, just the struggle chatter, which is like, oh my God, this is a nightmare, this is a nightmare, this is a nightmare?
Yeah, I think it's almost to pay attention to that. So I'll come back to that. I'm going to ramble a little bit, but I was listening to you talking to Graham on his podcast about your journey and about how the phrase "another door" came into your life, and I think there is something about how often we either get consumed by the struggle, or we try and like just ignore it and try and jump straight to like, silver linings, another door's going to open. It's all, everything happens for a reason, all those kind of platitudes. and like, as you know, like at the time, it's just irritating, isn't it? It's like, that's just not helpful. So I think that, that whole thing of struggle is almost like having the tension. So it's not all a nightmare. Equally, it's not all going to be a dream. It's going to be a mix of the two, and the two can coincide. And most of the human experience is a paradox. It's a contradiction. But we like sort of black and white thinking, particularly when we're in fight or flight mode. We want to know, right, what's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's dangerous. So I think what I would say to someone who's in the middle of that is kind of almost trying to notice what's going on and to be able to hold like nuance and tension in the same space. So to notice like, yeah, this is shit. Like, this does hurt, and it is scary, and there's lots of uncertainty. So like noticing all of those things, but also notice what it isn't. Because sometimes we can make things worse. So when we rage, one of the things I talk about in the book is like the Martin Seligman talks about 3 Ps. So we make things personal, permanent, and pervasive. So personal, it's my fault, something's wrong with me. Like that person didn't get made redundant. It happened to me. So we take things really personally. Permanent, it's like it's all the time. It's not just right now. And pervasive means it's everything. Like everything sucks, rather than just like this one thing sucks. And even just by noticing and then questioning like what's true. So what's true is this sucks, but maybe what's also true is not everything sucks. And what's true might be I feel shafted by whoever made that decision, and I still have some good networks here that can be helpful. And it's like holding those two things in tension. And that is a struggle in itself. Yes, it is. And it is, and it's hard work. And so like when I think also then when you feel exhausted and you go, I've only done like a couple of applications today, it's like recognizing it's because this is hard work. And this is what it feels like, and then not beating yourself up and go, there's something wrong with me, or I'm not coping well. I think that hard work thing is really interesting, that we feel like sometimes we've got a narrative that we have to make something hard work, otherwise we're not trying hard enough. And there's like a difference, isn't there? Like trying hard enough or doing enough just to get that next move or solve the problem or whatever isn't about flogging yourself to death for 24 hours. Yeah, absolutely. And particularly if what's needed is creativity, like and kind of like exploring possibilities, your brain doesn't think creatively if you pressure it too much. So sometimes that kind of pause and reflect is a useful ingredient in the mix to be able to go, okay, hang on a minute. Like, yes, I could just jump into another job exactly like this, but actually, if there's an opportunity here, what's the opportunity? Are there some elements of this current life that I actually didn't like? Is this now an opportunity to re-engineer and go, do you know what? If I'm taking a new job, what I want is more of this and less of that. And kind of but you need that kind of space to think about that and to reflect and to like fine tune, what do I want? Because I think especially in the corporate career, so much of what you do is like, what do other people want from me?
Yeah.
Right. And then like, when you're looking for a new job or you're looking to create a new opportunity, that's sometimes a really good opportunity to like just recalibrate, like, what do I want? And like maybe the me that applied for this job 10 years ago isn't the same me that I am now. So it gives you that opportunity to kind of recalibrate, I think.
That's such a good point around how much of our past career has, or even work, has been just dictated by someone else. That was definitely a surprise when I started thinking about it, because up to the point of that redundancy, I'd probably just been approached for every job. Like someone just coming along going, oh, we've got a job. This is it. Do you want it? And I've been like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll apply. No, it's either a headhunter or it was an internal job, or just somehow I just floated along without even thinking, is this really what I want to be doing? Do I really enjoy this? And it was a bit of a shock when I realised, oh my God, I never wanted to do any of that. What am I doing?
You just said yes because someone asked me.
23 years. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. What am I doing? I never wanted any of that. So it's a bit of a shock. And I think that causes the struggle. Like we talked about it at the beginning, like, can you cause your own mess? And you probably can. And sometimes the fear of causing mess and the struggle yourself is why you don't even ask those questions. You don't even want to know what you really want. You just know, look, I had a job, I did well in it, I earned money, everyone was happy, it's all happy and fine. It's all fine. I'm not going to rock the boat. Yeah.
That's it. And and it is, and I think a lot of that's ingrained in us as well. It's like, why would you want to break something? Why would you don't rock the boat? You've got a good job. It's really interesting. And I think for me, so I left my corporate career really early on. I had my midlife crisis in my mid-20s.
Get it over and done with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm impatient. Just get it over and done with. And I remember when I was in that really messy state of like just trying to figure out what do I do next and who am I and all of that kind of stuff. We were buying a house and my financial advisor offered me a job. Like, I don't even come from a finance background, but there was just something in me that he spotted and he's like, well, if you ever wanted to give this kind of career a go, like, he basically offered me a job. And I was like, I'm really flattered. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do because I'd left my other job because it was all about numbers. And it's so interesting because I'm a people pleaser. Like, that's part of my wiring. And I was a straight A student, so I had a bit of a good girl thing going. And so for me to be able to go, thanks so much, but that's not for me, was quite a learning for me to kind of do that. I'm so glad I'm able to do that now because of that. I've had to, and it's it's a work in progress. I keep having to come back to it. So sometimes in my business, I take on jobs or sort of projects where I go, because somebody asked me. They're like, oh, we need a productivity expert for this. Grace, would you be happy to get involved in this project? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then afterwards I go, did I really enjoy that? How much energy did it take out of me? What did it give me? Is that something I want to do again? And I think for me, kind of treating each thing project by project helps me to then reflect and review, so I don't feel like I'm stuck in it or I've made a commitment, therefore I always have to do things like that.
Yeah, that is a really great point. When things come along and people ask you to do things, whether in work or self-employment or if you run your own business, that programming and that work that you've done around knowing what you really want and what you're like, the energy side of it, that is a bit of a struggle. And I think in corporate, I can definitely identify with that. We've got this great project, we need someone to do this, and you're thinking, oh my God, I won't be able to do this. Like, I've already got a full-time job, but okay. Because again, we're programmed to think, well, if I say no, am I closing a door and is that it? If I say no to that, does the opportunity go away? And certainly I took from your book and obviously with Another Door stuff, it resonated. Sometimes a no is actually a bigger yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, struggle isn't always about, I think you've got it in here, it's not always about saying yes to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because sometimes the struggle is actually there's too much of a good thing going on, and you know, and sometimes I talk sometimes about the curse of the capable.
Yeah,
like when you're a can-do person, like you get asked to do lots of things because you can do it, and you know, and you sometimes we get to a point where we feel resentful for all the things that people are asking us to do. And at the end of the day, it's up to us to choose what we say yes and what we say no to, because if we're relying on somebody else to choose for us, they don't know us. So they're not going to choose the right thing for us. And, you know, and it's like almost the courage to go, oh, thanks so much for asking. Like, that's not something that I want to get involved in. Or maybe I don't have the capacity to get involved in that right now. But also I think people often, like you said earlier, people often go back to history. So you get known as the person who's really good at doing this. And I remember when I first started my business, I got known for being like the most organized person. And I'm like, I'm naturally disorganized. Why? And somebody asked me, and this was really early stages where it was like, I did all sorts of stuff. So I did a bit of coaching, I did a bit of copywriting, like anything, basically if people wanted my help and would pay me for it, I'd be like, okay, I'll do that. And in a way that was good because I was also just like exploring what do I enjoy doing. But also it was useful because it was money coming in to kind of keep me going. And I remember somebody who I had done some copywriting for his website was like, I'm running an event. It's like a charity event. You're the most organized person I know, Grace, and I need someone to run this event for me. And I thought, events is not my thing. Like, it's so not my thing. Like I get, I hate organizing my own parties because I get really anxious about like who's going to be there and there's all the right things going to be like just no. Like, I love being at an event and I love speaking at an event, but organizing one is not for me. And I call it the time that I passed up working with Hugh Grant. Because basically it was a charity event and Hugh Grant was coming as the celebrity, and I got my friend Zoe involved instead because she was an events organizer. So I was like, I'm not the right person, but I know who is, and I'll introduce you. And that was great all round. It was good for me. It was good for Zoe. It was good for the person who kind of was asking in the first place. And so I think there is something about knowing yourself and being brave, but also something about like being open to changing your mind, so you can try things and then go, actually, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And letting other people know, okay, this is what I'm doing now, rather than, but you were always that girl or that person.
Wow, I think that's going to resonate a lot with people. And you certainly have to do a lot of that work when you want to start reinventing yourself or changing what you do after job loss or whenever, changing career. You have to do a lot of that work about letting go of stuff. You've made me smile on the first thing you said about the capable person.
Curse of the capable, yeah.
Oh, I love that. I read Morris Sarchi's book. I can't remember what it was called, but he was giving advice to somebody and it said, the best way to get on in a company is be really shit at your job. It really made me laugh. I think he was getting on a panel or something. He was like, yeah, just be really shit because they'll just keep moving you on. Like, don't be really bad that they'll fire you because you're so bad, but just don't be really good because they'll just keep you. There's no motivation to help you to move on. And I started thinking about that and thinking, oh my God, how many really crap people get promoted in corporates? They just get moved on, don't they? Like, oh my God, they're a bit weird.
You're not the right fit for this. Let's move you somewhere else.
Thought, wow, that's genius. Anyway, that blew my mind, and I thought, I can't get my head around that, but okay. But you're right. We get wrapped up in our own label. We get it's a sort of ego comes into that as well because we're being asked to do something like that example you've given. Oh yeah, I'm good at that. Oh yeah, because you had a little word with yourself. No, Grace, I am not good at events. Let's go. Yeah. But the ego kind of wants to fulfill that nice compliment we've had, and before we know it, we're doing something we really don't want to do. Yeah. how do people break that whole thing about labeling themselves?
That's a really good question. I think the first thing, it comes back to permission. It's like, actually I do have permission to create my own labels. I have permission to change my mind. Just because I did one copywriting job doesn't mean I'm a copywriter, or I want to continue being a copywriter. So I think it's seeing each thing that you do as a learning, and deciding like, what learning do I take forwards, and almost kind of there's a phrase that I used as a title that someone said to me once: "The road we make by walking." And like, that actually this path, we create this path by walking it. So we will take the steps and then go, where am I now? And where do I want to be? And we'll course correct as we go along. And so it's a journey that we imagine and create as we go. So that means, I think that gives us freedom to be able to then go, okay, well, what next? Rather than like, oh, I took a wrong turn. Because if you feel like you've taken a wrong turn, it knocks your confidence, doesn't it? And then you feel less capable of making decisions that go like that break from the norm. Whereas if you see it as good information, every time something goes wrong or doesn't quite go as you plan, or you feel like, oh, this on paper was a really good opportunity, but I really hated doing it. So use all of that as good information. So it's not something to beat yourself up, but actually something that you go, okay, what does this tell me? And how does it help me to like refine and clarify the steps that I take next? Yeah,
that's really nice. I'm quite a visual person. I'm now visualizing like stepping stones that, you can fall off every now and again, but you just kind of get back on them. I really like that. That kind of reminds me, I've got another little quote that I loved. Let me find my scribbles. The quote is, "There are times when waiting is the work. When it feels like you're going nowhere, maybe that's right where you need to be." I love that, because I'm a busy person, and I'm a busy, as in, I'm not a busy person, I'm a busy person. Like, I have to be busy. If I'm not busy, I'm making busy. Like, I'm that, which is highly annoying. And especially when I do understand the power of slowing down and do nothing. So that quote was really, I loved it, because you've just used the word permission, but it's permission to do nothing. Sometimes you have to do nothing. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I need to hear more reassurance about doing nothing.
Oh, it's a funny one. I think I wrote that right at the beginning of lockdown. So that kind of section on the doldrums, like when it feels like nothing's happening. And it was really interesting, because I mean, my work was actually quite busy at that time, but what I noticed in a lot of other people was like, I'm not used to this. And there's this whole like existential crisis that happens when I'm not busy. It's like all the things that I'm making it to mean, like, does this mean I'm redundant, that I'm not needed, that, all of that kind of ego stuff. And also it's something that I've noticed in the past when talking with clients of like why they find it really hard to rest. So you're often, particularly like if you're a consultant as well, you have like kind of like boom and bust. You've got like times when you're like so busy, you're like, gosh, this has got to end. And then when it goes really quiet, you're then desperate looking for work, because you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to be quiet. Whereas actually, if we can like sort of think our way into, oh no, okay, it's not supposed to be a flat line. Maybe there is a rhythm to it. So that I don't think there's something wrong when I go into that, but actually going, what's the opportunity here? And then the other thing that kind of came into the mix of that was I talk in the book about the morning after. So like the hangover that comes. And often, like if you look at like movies, like epic movies, you see the glory of the battle, but you very rarely see the morning after, when like you've got the armor chafing and the bruises and like the hobbling. And I remember like ages ago, I did a 10K race, and that was such an achievement for me. But I sprained my ankle halfway through, and I didn't notice, it didn't like set in until I started slowing down. And the next morning when I was doing the school run, I was hobbling and shuffling like so slowly. All these toddlers were racing past me. And I was like, I just felt like such an invalid. I'm like, I was running yesterday and I can just barely hobble to school today. And I think sometimes we don't realize actually that kind of come down that happens after a big event, whether that's a big trauma or a big like high, there is a certain adrenaline come down that happens and that kind of morning after feeling. And sometimes we can find ourselves in that and go, what the heck is wrong with me? Yeah, why am I feeling like this? Nothing's going on. I'm feeling rubbish. Actually, what we're feeling is telling us about what we've been through rather than what we're going through now. So again, it's that like, recognizing this is what's going on. So I'm not adding to the struggle by beating myself up. And I've been through like periods of that. So after the second book came out and I was doing all the sort of launch activity and all of that kind of stuff, I hit a wall because I think I was doing that alongside a massive like project with a client where we were traveling all over the UK and all over Scandinavia. So it was amazing. But I just hit a wall where I couldn't write anything. I was sort of creatively burnt out, if you like. And I remember I picked up Amanda Palmer's book, The Art of Asking, and she talks in there about the creative cycle of collecting, connecting, and sharing. So collecting is when you're collecting your raw materials or your ideas. Connecting is where you're joining the dots and making something new. And then sharing is where you go out there and share it with the world. And for me, I was just shared out. Like sharing is my natural, like it's what I enjoy doing the most, but I was shared out. And I realized I had to go back to that collecting. And so for me, sometimes there are periods where it looks like I'm doing nothing. I'll go and sit in a cafe and, alongside a friend and we'll just kind of natter, or, I'll kind of try and play with an idea and I'll have 2 lines written. So sometimes it just goes really slow. And I'm recognizing that's part of the cycle. And it tells me something about where I've been, but also it's kind of that rest and recuperation and that like regrounding before I can go back to like ramping up the energy for the next thing.
Yeah, that makes me think about organizations as well, and us as individuals in organizations, where some of us are programmed to be in that busy, as you talk, the adrenaline and all of that. I love that 3, the cylinder, because we're focused on a thing, so big transformation, or I'm probably one of those people. I prefer to be in that state of like there's a big thing, big change, and that's my whole comfort zone is, change and all the rest of it. But other people, it's not, and they much prefer to have that linear line. But what none of us are very good at is what you've just described, that it's sometimes okay to sit back and kind of take it in and where are we? Where am I? What's happening around me? What do I want to do next? Especially in organizations, we just push to the next thing, and no time to do that thinking, which I guess is when redundancy comes and disrupts for you and says, actually, you didn't need this time, or burnout, burnout. A lot of people will burn out at that point. So that's a great little thing to check in with yourself around, that slowing down. And as your quote says, it's part of it. Doing nothing is part of it. So that, I think that's a massive message. I've got to work on it more. I'm not good at all. I'm not good at it. I just I'm like sand. You dig a hole and you just fill the stick up and it fills. Just need to keep the hole without the water in it.
And go, what do I actually want to fill this with?
Exactly. Conscious decisions, not just kind of going with, I know. The other thing I wanted to do just before, let me find it. It's fallen out now. That's very annoying. Where is it? Here we go. This is the bit I loved towards the end. There's so much good stuff in here. But again, this quote: "Feel it all. The terror, the excitement, the pain, the joy, the vulnerability, and the freedom. Feel it all." That's very powerful. We've kind of been describing that just now to a degree, but tell us a little bit more about feel it all.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine saying that to me when we moved house, when we moved in, because there was like so much going on. And I think again, talking about like the human
Yeah.
experience, often there's like a whole contradiction, and sometimes what we want to do is we want to make it tidy and we want to make sense of it. So we won't want to be able to say this is good or this is bad, this is fun or this is boring. But actually, quite often there's a mix of stuff. And so if we have to go into black and white thinking, we have to like zone in on one thing, we then disregard the rest. Whereas actually feel it all just means like, okay, so maybe there is a whole range of emotions going on here. And by acknowledging it, it means that we can then process it and deal with it and decide what we want to do with it. Because if we bottle something up or we repress it, it's going to come back and bite us somewhere else. So it's like just like feeling it and then deciding what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And it also means that you're present. You're not trying to pretend something's not there. Because I think that's where, coming back to those platitudes that we talked about, like the silver linings and things like that, that's where those things get irritating, because it only tells half the story.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like I'm trying to jump to the end and ignore all the middle. Whereas actually the middle is, it is where the magic happens. And it is, so the whole thing of just being present and showing up and noticing all those things, rather than I'm trying to rush through it and get to the end. So I talk also about the idea of like shining light in the middle of the tunnel, rather than just having light at the end of the tunnel. Because sometimes the tunnel is where the work is, and the transformation can happen and where the reflection can happen, as long as we shine a light there and we pay attention there, rather than just looking to, I just need to get another job, or just need to get to the place where I feel like everything's okay again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. The space in between, that's kind of like the door closing, the next one opening, that space in between. I like that, shine the light in the tunnel. I get a little bit of pushback on that sometimes. People say, well, I haven't got time for that. Like, it's all very well if you've had fancy jobs and you've got to pay out. That's not everybody's story of job loss. And in America, obviously, they definitely don't even understand the concept of
redundancy pay. Yeah.
I was like, what? You just get shown the door. That's the end. So yeah, it makes you very grateful for what we have here. But it's a different story. How do people build in, because it's still important, whatever circumstance, you're definitely going to get a better impact if you create that space. How do people shine the light in the tunnel when they're under so much pressure financially?
Yeah, I think it's I'm going to come back to that permission. It's giving yourself permission to stop and it might not be stopping for a whole year. Like if you've got redundancy pay, like great, like if that's what you want to do, but it might just be stopping for a minute, or like a day. And particularly if you're in a season where you're just kind of firing off application after application after application. And going back to what you said about what feels productive, it's like I've got to make the most of every single minute. But actually, sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is just stop and walk away, and then come back. So it might be, do you know what? Sometimes maybe the most productive thing I can do today is to go and take a walk, clear my head, and then come back and then tackle the next application. So I think it's it's definitely something that can be engineered, and it almost doesn't matter so much like what size or shape it takes. It's just the fact that there's a presence of it. So rather than trying to flatline, and I often say anything that has life, a flatline is not a good sign. If you want those peaks, you need to like ride the troughs and kind of respect that. And that's something I talked about in my second book, actually. I interviewed an occupational psychologist who said, like, if you look at athletes, they don't go straight from running a race straight into the gym. Like, that would just not be a good idea. Like, who in their right mind would do that? So they take rest and recovery really seriously, and they see it as part of what helps them to have their peak performance. And I think we can adopt the same mindset, whether that's during, like, at work, or whether that's when we're out of work and we're looking for work, like whatever season we're in, to have that mindset of like, if I want the peaks, I need to respect the troughs and the rest and recovery, and see that as part of what helps me to ride it and get to the top as well.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. I've got a post-it note like wall of
I love
people. that I grab things. It's just, thank you so much. This has been incredible. What one thing would you say to someone who identifies what we've been talking about? They feel struggle. What's the one thing maybe they could do today that might just help?
So I'm going to leave them with what I call the 3 shits model that I talk about in the book. So the first is oh shit. So it's recognizing, and it's that feeling, it like recognizing the feelings, recognizing what's going on, acknowledging like what you're dealing with right now. The second is what is this shit? So it's where we start activating curiosity in the face of that kind of fear response. It's where we start going, we start checking with ourselves, with those 3 Ps. Or we start going, okay, what does this mean? But what am I making it to mean? What else could it mean? So it's where we can start to broaden our perspective on it. And then what that will lead to is the third, which is holy shit. Because that's the revelation. That's when you discover the opportunity or the truth or the beauty that's hidden in that shitty moment. So even just like kind of taking yourself through that, or just asking like, where am I up to? Is this just a no shit moment? Do I just need to give myself like time to lick my wounds and to acknowledge the pain? Or am I ready to step into that? What is the shit? Am I ready to step into curiosity and start getting creative with the mess? And then recognizing, trusting that will then lead to the holy shit moment that will lead to the revelation.
Absolutely brilliant. And that gives a whole different definition to having a shit day now.
Right.
Actually, I'm having a shit day. Oh, I'm really sorry. No, I'm working through
It's good stuff.
Shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, we can't go anywhere else now from there, Grace. That is brilliant. That's the perfect place to end the podcast. Where can people find you?
So they can find me at gracemarshall.com, and they can find out more about the book at strugglethebook.com.
And it is a massively inspiring read. It's so lovely. Actually, not just for struggle, but just like, I don't know, a bit of hope, and it's really lovely. So yeah, really recommend getting the book. So thank you so much for coming on, and have a good day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
You too.
Lovely. Thank you, Grace. That was brilliant.
Oh, fab. No, I enjoyed that. That was really good fun.
Yeah, that was good. I loved that. I was hoping you were going to add that bit at the end. Shits. So good. I should have actually asked you and prompted you. So good. It's such a lovely book, though. It's really. Are you getting lots of good feedback, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I'm starting to get the reviews in, which is brilliant. Really, really helpful. And I mean, if you're happy to pop a review,
I will do that.
Brilliant. Yeah, that'd be so great. Nice.
Yeah, I will do it now.
Oh, thank you. And I was going to say, anybody else who you think I should be talking to about struggle?
Okay. I'll drop you a note. Yeah, I'll have a think about it. Definitely.
Cool.
Yeah. Yes, let me have a think. I'll drop you some notes.
Cool.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You too.
Bye.
Bye.